I'm Nicky Schrire and I'm here with Fabian Almazan. And together we are going to demonstrate ways that you can approach South African jazz vocal repertoire. And by that I mean that we're going to bring to attention some things you may not have considered before in terms of when you're singing music that is from a different genre, whether it be jazz, R&B, pop, rock, classical music. It's really important to pay attention to the nuances of each genre for several reasons. Firstly, it helps you as a musician and as a singer better connect to the music and the song that you're singing. Secondly, it should be a sign of respect for the music you're singing. If you've paid attention and done your homework, then in essence you're saying, I think that your genre is a really important genre and I've taken the time to go and find out some of the things that make it specifically what it is. And thirdly, when you're dealing with something like South African jazz, very often you'll be singing in a different dialect. The same thing happens when you're dealing with subgenre of jazz that is Brazilian jazz. You'll be singing in Portuguese a lot of the time. And if that's not your mother tongue, then you have to pay even more attention to the characteristics of the music and the stylistic traits of singing that particular type of music in that particular language. So South Africa has 11 official languages, and a lot of the South African jazz tends to be either in Xhosa or in Zulu or in a hybrid of the two. And now, as we move further into the 21st century, there are songs with lyrics that are in Pedi and Shwana and other dialects. So it's important to really get a sense of the sound of the language that you're singing in, and that will also help you connect to the music and the history of that music. And this is certainly the case when dealing with South African jazz. Once you've chosen which songs you want to sing, there are a couple of steps that you can take towards really immersing yourself in the music and making sure that you give an authentic performance of the song while still retaining a sense of yourself and your sensibilities. The first thing to consider is range. In South African jazz, a lot of the singers who've made a name for themselves in the genre and brought attention to this subgenre of jazz are singers with warmer, lower-end voices. So they would be classified as alto singers. People like Miriam Makeba, Dorothy Masuka, Busi Mhlongo, Simpiwe Dana, and the list goes on. So bearing that in mind, it also affects the way that you sing in Xhosa or Zulu or any of the sort of hybrid dialects that have come about in this music. So range is important. For example, we're going to use a song by Busi Mhlongo called Yisewa Banta Bami as our example. And if I was going to sing this song, I would try and sing it in a range, a part of my range that was comfortable for me, but that was also a good match for the style at hand. So I would not sing it, for example, up here. That might be fine, and I am classified as a soprano, but that really isn't a good reflection of the genre that I'm trying to bring across in the music that I'm singing. So I would take it down to the lower part of my range. The second thing to bear in mind before we sing an example, play an example, is that you want to also have a look at the vocal inflections of the genre. So we're going to sing it for you now without any of those inflections. Perhaps this is the tone that I would use if I was singing a modern song or a song from the contemporary jazz repertoire that I felt didn't need any vibrato, although I sing with very little vibrato anyway, and really benefited from a very direct reading. So let's play from the beginning. Wathi awanele nginika inhliziyo yami uthi ayanele senginika uthi ayanele Gini kuqobol wam uthi awanele. So that would be a very straight, literal reading of the lyrics with almost no attention to the inflections of the language and any vocal artistic inflections that would make this song sound more like it really fit in the South African jazz genre. We're going to do it again for you, and I'm going to use some vocal inflections which I believe help me feel a little bit more grounded in this world. Some of the things I'm going to use are what I like to call a vocal cry. So instead of approaching a note straight on, ding, you can almost put a little bit of a cry in your voice, ding, kumzimbawa, so that it has a little bit more of a guttural sense of urgency. And it also, if I was standing up, it would help me personally feel more grounded in my feet, which is important when singing in my lower range. And the second thing is also not being so concerned with pitch perfection when it comes to the end of these tones. They're allowed to fall off. It doesn't have to be sustained perfectly on pitch. Also, the notes don't necessarily have to be sustained at all. So that's something to listen out for, is the attack of the note and the phrase, and also the follow through of the phrase. Those two aspects give you a very good idea of stylistically what the options are. So we're going to do it for you again. Gini kumzimbawa wathi awanele Gini ginhliziyo yam uthi ayanele Sengini kuthando lwam uthi awanele Gini kuqobo lwam uthi ayanele. So hopefully it becomes a little bit richer and it becomes a little bit more of a direct line towards the genre and the stylistic traits of that sub-jazz genre. The other thing that you can do is you can also play around with the harmony. South African jazz typically centers around 3 chords, 1, 4, and 5, so tonic, subdominant, and dominant. So if we were in C major, that would be C, F, and G. And a lot of the jazz is based around those 3 chords. And as we've moved on in time, the music has become a lot more complex and has borrowed from perhaps the American jazz tradition. So musicians like Becky and Selek, whose music has a lot of cycle of fifths and other harmonic devices that really give a nod of the hat to American piano tradition. But this song is very much a 1-4-5 kind of song, although it uses other chords. So what you can do is to, again, it's all about tapping into this specific subgenre and the sounds of the genre. You can simplify it even further. And because there's repetition, a lot of these songs, it'll be a verse that repeats, or there'll be verse 1, verse 2. You have the opportunity to use a very simple set of harmonic progressions, and the second time round, you can reharmonize it and add in a little bit more color. And by doing so, you're able to inject yourself into the music, so that you've done due diligence, you've listened to the music, you've made sure that you've learnt the lyrics faithfully, and you're aware of the nuances that make that style specifically what it is. But at the same time, you're also taking tools that you've learned elsewhere, whether it's a Western European tradition, or it's a classical tradition, or it's the American jazz tradition, and you are marrying the two. So Fabian and I are going to do it for you again. And the introduction, you'll notice, is a pattern, a very simple pattern, which actually comes from the original recording of this song, Busi Mhlongo's version, which is on her Urban Zulu album. So what I realized that you could do is that you could actually take that pattern and you could keep it under the entire first verse. And it creates quite a nice sense of setting the atmosphere and setting the stage so that people who aren't necessarily familiar with Zulu or with any South African jazz repertoire, they have time to sort of adjust their ears to the sounds. So we're going to do it for you, where the first verse uses this simple repeated pattern, I guess you could call it an ostinato phrase, under the lyrics, and then it breaks away into the chorus. Then when we come back to verse 2, which is the same melody as verse 1, there are chords on the page that Fabian is going to play that allow us and the listener to sort of break on and develop from the initial setting of the piece. So that's what we're going to do for you now. Gingni kumsimbawa wachi awanele Gingni ginklizio ya uchi ayanele Singingni kutandolwan uchi awanele Gingni kukabalwan uchi awanele Intoni na isewa bantabami Intoni na isewe zingani sami Imla sengilala ingalele Abangangawe Honga intoni na Gingni kumsimbawa wachi awanele Gingni ginklizio ya uchi ayanele Singingni tandolwan uchi awanele Gingni kukabalwan Intoni na isewa bantabami Intoni na isewe zingani sami Himla sengilala ingalele Ngabangangawe Wonga intoni na Oh yeah Kongeli yo kangama Ilelone yo nanga yo ka Nalingi yo Beo kanga ko yingo nanga Hey 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 Baba kaya la Masihla lisaning o kutule kaya tu Oh yeah Sifundi sinkloni Poku bandwana betu boya Masipambare gezadla Uwe baba Imi baba na bantwana Uwe baba, imi baba na bantwana Uwe baba